Okay, so here goes Objective 3. The next one after this video, this will be kind of short, will be Objectives 4 and 5 together. So explain and apply active listening techniques. Rather simple you would think, but sometimes not. No one ever listened himself out of a job, observed President Calvin Coolidge many years ago. Now, everyone knows how to listen. We do it without thinking. Perhaps that explains why so many of us are poor listeners. Although many of the tips for improving your listening skills will be effective in your personal life as well as your professional life. So let's go look at what it has to say. Okay, poor listening habits may reflect lack of training. Few schools give as much emphasis to listening as they do to the development of reading, speaking, and writing. Listening skills may be less than perfect because of the large number of competing sounds and stimuli in our lives. I like this picture. It's it's funny, but could be and could be serious too. Finally, we're inefficient listeners because we are able to process speech much faster than others can speak. Most speakers talk at 125 to 175 words per minute. Listeners can listen at 450 words per minute, which means that's why sometimes we daydream. Types of workplace listening. There's listening to your supervisors. Assignments, explanations, instructions. Focus should be totally on the speaker to make sure you're not distracted by noisy surroundings. Don't take phone calls. Don't try to complete another job. Don't multitask. Take notes. Me, definitely take notes. 5 minutes after you tell me, I'm going to forget. I take notes on what you guys tell me. Don't rely on your memory. Details are easy to forget. Don't be afraid to ask quote unquote dumb questions if it means you won't have to do a job twice. Avoid criticizing and arguing when you're listening to a supervisor. Listening to colleagues and teammates. Much of your listening would take place during interactions with fellow workers. There are two kinds of listening. One is critical listening. It enables you to judge and evaluate what you're hearing. You can listen to decide whether a speaker's message is fact, fiction, or opinion. It requires an effort on your part, and you must remain objective and control your tendency to prejudge. Then there is descriptive listening. When you must discern, understand, and remember, it means you must identify main ideas, logical argument, and recognize the purpose of the message. Listening to customers. As U.S. economy becomes increasingly service-oriented, the new management mantra has become customers rule. Many organizations know that listening to customers results in increased sales and profitability. Consumers feel better about companies that value their opinions. Customers want to be cared about. Think of you as a customer. Because employees are the eyes and ears of the organization, smart companies begin by hiring staff members who genuinely care. And this figure goes on to explain untrained listeners versus trained listeners, listening to customers, comparing trained and untrained. So tune out some of what the customer is saying because they know the answer, the employees, the listener. Divide their attention among two or more tasks because listening is automatic. You interrupt the customer. You give few, if any, verbal responses. Train once, defer judgment, and listen for the customer's feelings. Okay, again, a lot of what's not being said is more important than what's being said. Pay most attention to content. Listen primarily for the main idea and avoid replying. Control their anger and refuse to fight fire with fire. Give affirming statements and invite additional comments. Those are all good things to remember. Improving workplace listening. And so there's some suggestions here about workplace listening is more challenge. can be disorganized, unclear, and cluttered with extraneous facts. Listening in groups can become more difficult. Group members are monitoring both verbal and nonverbal messages. 10 keys to building powerful listening skills. And this will take us through the end of this objective. Control external and internal distractions, become actively involved, separate facts from opinions, identify the important facts, avoid interrupting. It's really easy to interrupt because you think you know what they're going to say, so before you forget it, you want to have it come out of your mouth. Not exactly the best thing in the world. You're not always right about that. Ask clarifying questions just to make sure that you understand what they're saying. Paraphrase to increase understanding. This is what I was taught. It's where you say what they just told you or what they just asked you back in a different way just to make sure everybody's on the same page. And this is just a couple of comments from Oprah Winfrey. Capitalize on lag time. Take notes to ensure retention. If you do this, tell the person why you're taking the notes. Be aware of gender differences. Men tend to use interrupting behavior to control the conversations, while women generally interrupt to communicate assent or to elaborate. Women listeners and male listeners do things less. Women tend to be attentive, more steady eye contact, remain stationary and nod their heads. Men are less attentive, provide sporadic eye contact, and move around. Okay, and so then here's the beginning of learning objective 4.